Hello and welcome to the Fishing Podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things fishing, gear, tactics, venues, and of course the fish we catch. I'm Liam Hall.
And I'm Matt Jones. Well, back to another episode.
Here we are.
So how you been? Start with the usual.
Yeah, good. It's a weekend for us recording today, so a Sunday. So it's been good. It's been a busy day. It's been nice. The weather's been good. As of now, England have just won the Euros. Come on. I meant as in like our match this evening. The Euros isn't our game. We've not just won the Euros. We should do the caption: England have won the Euros? ? We've just won our game against Slovakia. 2-1. Exciting last couple of minutes.
Yep.
So we were keeping an eye on it whilst we were setting up.
Yep.
But apart from that, yeah, I'm good. Loving life. How about you? How's things?
Yeah, good. Same old. You know, kind of busy week, busy weekend. I've been off for the last kind of 10 days, bit of annual leave. So
Very nice.
had a decent amount of fishing getting in, which is nice. And then, just life admin. Just catching up. Life gets on top of you. So you just got to take a few days off just to go, you know what, get the car serviced, get the house stuff sorted, you know. But we are where we are. We're back.
Speaking of catching up.
Yeah.
Catching. How's your fishing been?
Nice little segue, that. My fishing's been quite good. Yeah. Well, we were at a new lake.
We were.
We tested and trialled that out. We'll have another video coming out at some point soon. Only a short one, but just us discussing kind of how we approach a new lake.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's coming. But yeah, that was a good little experience. But we did that. I unfortunately blanked.
It happens.
But I did, kind of get out for a kind of few hours yesterday, and I did catch 2 at kind of one of our OG waters. So yeah, it's been good. Fishing's been regular. The catches haven't been regular, but fishing's been regular, which has been nice. So how's your fishing been?
I think that's carp fishing, firstly. It's just not regular. It's one of those things, isn't it? Like, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about their other half, and they were just saying, oh, all this money they're spending on fishing gear and not catching anything. And it's like, that's how it is, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately.
My fishing's been good, actually. It's been, as you said, we got out the beginning of this week, so we managed to get out for, it was like we'd planned to do a 48, but we ended up probably doing more of a 36, didn't we, in the end? I guess that was effectively because it was 27 degrees both days. I did catch, which was good, was nice. However, though, so I had 2, nothing crazy, both quite small, a 17-pound 2 and a 30 and like a 14-pound, basically just under. But they both came, one at 4 in the morning and one at 7:50 in the morning on the first night. So it's just when it was cooler, and then nothing happened during the rest of the next day, did it? And then that night, relatively quiet, I think, for the most part, wasn't it? We had a couple of like beeps, backdrops and stuff like that. But I think the reality of it is, it's just the next day we got up and we just thought they were all on the surface, and the lake specifically doesn't allow any surface fishing. So I think, for the most part, fishing's good. It's nice to get back out again, get catching. We found the new lake, as you said, which was nice. It was one we'd never been to before. It was a recommendation. Mousehole, Kingfisher. Nice lake. Nice people.
Really nice. It's like proper. I mean, we were umming and ahhing when we first turned up, because it's like
really
proper commercial fishery. And it's like, they're two ends of the spectrum with commercial fisheries. You either get them that are really nice, run by fishermen, so just understand the ways of doing it. But then you also get the other commercial fisheries that are purely there for the money, and they don't fish themselves. They don't get it. They just literally give us your money and do whatever the hell you want. And that attracts a very particular type of person. So, but actually, like, this was the complete opposite. It was actually really nice. It was almost like a little mini holiday park, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah, it felt like that. That was the thing. It was like, I think it's just from previous experience. We've turned up to a few lakes in the past where they're super commercial, like graveled swims, and like they say, they like lean a lot into their amenities more than anything else. And it's sometimes that can be a bit off-putting. I think at first, when you first get into fishing, you first start carp fishing, and there is a group of like, people who generally only want to do that sort of fishing as well. you sort of think, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is so cool. Like, they'll take you to your swims. You can have breakfast brought around to your swim. You know, some of the lakes have like main sockets on it, and you think, oh, this is brilliant. Like, what more do you want? But at the same time, though, one, there's a cost that's associated with that sort of fishing. Two, you kind of sometimes, at least for me, I feel it doesn't. It's going to say, I'm going to use a word which is super common in the industry, but it doesn't feel very carpy. Like, it doesn't have like that.
I know what you mean. Cool
feel to it. But it's definitely a different experience. It's a nice sort of experience. It's something to do every now and then, I think.
Yeah,
so.
I think we very much like that fishing type that's like very much in the wild. Like, it's, you know, yes, it's nice to have a bark chipped swim, but, you know, we don't want everything to be like properly pruned back and know, to be immaculate. We like it to be, you know, kind of a bit more natural.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's important, to be fair. The experience part of like being on the bankside is part of it, and if it is very much just sort of feel like you're you've just kind of crashed out of a garden centre with like, you know, these white rocks all over the swim and
sleepers
and stuff. Like, it doesn't. The experience is different.
Yeah.
But speaking of experiences and your experiences fishing, nice little segue to our topic point.
That's 2 segues now.
2 segues on a roll.
2 clean segues
on a roll. Our topic is going to be, which are sort of 3 experiences that for us in our sort of carp fishing career, good or bad, that have sort of like been something that's like stuck with us, or something that's maybe changed our fishing style, for example. So I think anything that's kind of been a really good experience, a bad experience, or something that has gone on to really affect or sort of change our fishing from here on out.
Yeah. I think, it can literally be anything good or bad. No parameters on this one. Just tell us a story, good or bad, of something that's happened during fishing.
Okay, so it could be nice, could not. I've definitely got a nice and a not nice one, which has affected my fishing.
Okay.
So we'll kick off with the nice story for me, which is just number 1, I think, and then we'll move on to my bad story, which I sort of would rather not relive, but we will for the sake of this.
Okay, I'm quite intrigued to know what this is now. I don't think I know.
Yeah. A nice fishing memory for me, and it's one of those things, that's probably why I've continued to fish. So we used to fish at a local lake called Lakeview, which is actually where me and Matt met when we were little knee-high to a grasshopper. And there was a bridge that went along to this little island pontoon, effectively, and on that bridge I was fishing there for ages. I never really caught anything massive for the most part. Like, we used to do a lot of like pole fishing, and it was when I was like super young with my granddad and my dad and stuff, and I used to just effectively just catch roach, rudd, maybe the small little carp, like F1 style fish if you were sort of lucky, you know, perch and all that sort of thing. You'd obviously catch bream as well. But I was fishing off the bridge, which is, I'd never really fished off it. I'd always fished off these like swims. And I was fishing with my granddad, and he's always been like a mythical figure in fishing when I was younger, because he was like, he'd caught decent sized fish. He like ran a couple of like waters and stuff with members and whatnot. And we were fishing off a bridge, and it was the first time I'd hooked into like a big carp and caught and landed a big carp. And I remember thinking, the reality of it is the fish was probably only 8 to 10 pounds. Yeah. But when I was, I mean, like what, probably single digit age, it's like the size of me. And I remember going, like, thinking like, oh God, must have been massive. And the reality is it probably was only 8 to 10 pounds. But when you're that age and you catch like a fish that big, it was massive. I remember thinking like, this is absolutely humongous. And yeah, that's always been like my first like carp or decent carp that I've caught. So that's a nice wholesome one to start with. And I remember it was on a pole, and there's something exciting about catching like a decent sized carp on a pole, because the elastic comes out and it's like a whole different sort of experience. Very one that we don't do that often now. So number 1
that's a nice little story, that.
There you go.
Okay, I got another nice one for you.
Oh, okay, back to back nices.
So I was, again, like single digit age. This is where I used to fish down a place called Milton Mount Lakes.
Yeah,
that.
I know it, yeah.
And yeah, like I used to go down there, literally, me as a little whippersnapper with like a single rod that my parents had brought me from Argos. Yeah, I don't know if I ever told you this, but there was a guy that lived down my street, like an old, like proper old man, like really, really old. And he was basically giving up fishing. And he saw me walking back home one day after going up Milton Lakes, and I used to live literally like just up the hill from the lake, and as I was walking back, he saw me with my rod and my net in my hand, and literally and a backpack. That's all I had, nothing more. And he literally shouted over to me and just said, "Oi, come over here!" And I was like, "Yay, hi!"
I'm gonna get stolen.
I was bricking myself.
Yeah.
I was like, if someone shouts at you in the street at that age, something bad's happening.
What have I done wrong?
And no, and he basically just said to me that he was throwing out all of his fishing gear, and he was literally putting it all in the cart there and then to go and take it all up the tip. And I, at the time, I was just like, "Oh, okay."
I'll have everything.
No, he literally then said exactly that to me. He was like, "You obviously fish, or you're just getting into it. Do you just want it all?" And I was like, well, yeah." And I didn't even hesitate. I just said, "Yes, I'll take it," not knowing what was in it. And he ended up like, first of all, giving me this old like wooden trolley that he'd made himself. But you know, like the old match fisherman trolleys that have like a seat on the top. He basically made it himself. That had wheels on it. It was all made out of like plywood, but it had like a lid top with loads of tackle, terminal tackle in the top, and that kind of stuff. And then it had like a little like clip on the back that you could put your nets and all of that. So like he gave me that, and that was the first bit I saw. And then afterwards he gave me a rod bag that literally had like 4 or 5 different rods in it. Everything from like, do you remember like quiver tip rods and that kind of stuff? Like a whole bunch of them. And I was like, what an absolute result. And then literally I went home with all of this new fishing gear that this old man had just given me on my way home. And as I got back, my mum and dad looked at me and went, "Who have you stolen it from?"
Where have you nicked this from?
Yeah, I was just like, no, an old man gave it to me. Like I was just walking
this
home.
Mythical person
he was
gave
throwing
it to me.
Out. No, but my parents made me like point out the house that gave it to me just to prove that I didn't nick it.
You didn't steal it.
I didn't nick it. But yeah, like that was like kind of cemented fishing in for me really, because I was just like, you know what?
You've got the stuff now. So.
I was like, clearly the community's nice. You know, I got all the stuff for it now. I didn't have all the stuff for it. It was old stuff that had better off being just thrown in the tip. But yeah, like that was one of my early experiences with fishing. It was quite a nice little, you know, just hand me down. None of my family fished at all, so it was just like some random guy just gave me all of his stuff that he was about to throw out.
I'm surprised I don't know that. Firstly,
yeah.
So
I was like yay tall. I was tiny.
That's very sweet. Yeah, I didn't know that.
We definitely didn't know each other back then.
Oh god, no, of course we didn't. I don't think we met till we were much later on.
Yeah.
Oh, very nice.
There's a nice little story for
a
you.
wholesome little... Yeah, see, I got most of my fishing stuff just from, like, my dad, family, because my dad and my granddad fished. Fish. So I was just able to kind of get into it from them. So, but, very lovely.
Yeah.
Right, well, my one...
Come on, we've got to have a bad story at some point.
Will be a bad story.
There's going to be a bad one.
Yeah, this one's a bad one, but it's more... So... It wasn't recently. It was actually probably, the reality is it's probably a good while ago now. We had just started fishing a bigger lake. Yeah. Not by bigger as in size, rather. Let me rephrase that. We just started fishing a lake where it was taking a bit more seriously. And we turned up, and up until that point, it was very much a case of you could share landing nets, you could share landing mats. Like, it didn't really matter too much.
I'm trying to think what lake this was now.
It was where we are fish currently, basically. Well, we still fish there. Well, we fish there still.
Oh, okay.
And you could kind of do what you wanted for the most part. Like, you didn't need, at other lakes rather. And you could fish, share a sling. You didn't need a sling. You could just, weigh the fish however. Scales. Again, it didn't matter. And then we started at this lake, and it was like, no, you must now have a landing net of X size. You must have your own, weigh mat of X. Yeah. They didn't require a sling. However, it was all very much leader checks, and it was the first lake we'd fished, and it was like, oh, there's a rule list here we've got to kind of adhere to. However, it was because they have much larger and much bigger fish. Yeah. And we were, fishing there, and I had woken up in the morning, and I'd heard like an alarm going off, but it went off like just once, and I was like, kind of got up, looked out, and was just sort of thinking, was that? Did anything happen there? Did it not? And I looked, and the rod wasn't doing anything. So I was like, okay, just a single bep. Laid back down and got up, maybe sort of like, 10 minutes later or something like that. And I thought, I'll just check that. Went out, and my rod was like this. And I was like, firstly, why has my alarm not gone off? What's gone on? So I've picked it up, and I've reeled in and I've walked over to like a bit of a peninsula, an island, and it's gone straight under the island. And I'm like, what is this? So I'm like so I put my rod tip down and I can't feel anything on the line. And I'm like, what has happened here? Trying to figure out, it's like 5 in the morning or something like that. I'm trying to put my hand under it and the island undercuts like 6 to 8 foot. Like if you stand and you jump, it goes up and down basically. And I'm trying to reach under and I can't get anything. I can't really figure out what's going on. I don't know if there's a fish on it. And then one of the bailiffs arrives at that time and drives behind the back of the swim. And he's like, "You're right, mate." Sees me sort of laying down. I'm thinking, of all the people I wanted to like appear when this has happened, this was not one of them. So he comes out, gets out of the car, walks over, and he's like, "What's going on?" I sort of explain. He's like, "Right." So then he has to like lay down as well. And we're both trying to figure out what's gone with this line's gone. Rip the line out from, and he literally has to basically put his entire like almost head under the water to go under. Rip the line out with a load of roots, and then all of a sudden, rod goes tight, and I'm into a fish, and I'm like, oh god. So I'm playing this fish.
At that point, the pressure's now on.
Pressure's on. The bailiff's there. I'm already feeling terrible because like something's gone wrong to the point where it was stuck. Luckily, not for ages. So I start playing this fish. Bailiff's there, and then just a sequence of events then unfolded where it just got worse. Another person turns up. He's watching. It's now probably about, it's half an hour total since the initial bet. People are turning up like at the lake. It's probably actually more about 6 o'clock, and someone's behind the swim. Another person's behind him. All of a sudden, I've got an audience of like 6 people who are watching me play this fish. And I'm like, oh. So anyway, get it in the net. Brilliant. And then it's just like, okay, I've got 6, 7 people behind me. I've just had to rip this out. I'm already feeling like relatively embarrassed. Matt's asleep in the bivvy next to me, like a couple of swims down. Nowhere to be seen to come and help. Right, absolutely out cold. And then I've got trousers on, which probably didn't fit that well. And as I'm trying to like get the fish in, like my trousers are falling down, and he's like, there's like a commentary going on behind me, like, "You know any trousers that fit you, falling down," all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake, that's going on. And then I'm like, oh, I need to weigh it now. And we didn't have a weigh sling. So we had, at this point, I had a net, I had a mat, no weigh sling. And I'm thinking, I've got to get this fish. And the reason this was on my mind is because we caught a fish the night before. I'd caught a fish the night before. And it was the first fish I caught there, and we had to weigh it. And initially, we thought we'd weigh it in we had like a weigh net. Yeah. Not big enough for the fish in here. Not big enough. Right. So I was like, right, we borrowed a sling from someone, but it was the morning, we didn't have the sling. And so I'm like, right, I'm going to have to go and get this sling because I don't want to put it in this net in front of all these people and weigh it because they're like they care about the fish a lot. So then I'm like, okay, I'm going to go and get a sling. And they're like, "Have you not got a sling?" And I'm like, "No, I don't have a sling. I'm going to get a sling." So then I'm like, right, I put my shoes on. So I get my wellies, and I'm trying to put my wellies on, but I've got thermal socks on, tog socks, and normal socks. I can't get my wellies on properly because I've got so many socks on, I can't fit them on, and I'm trying to push them in. And then they're like, "Oh, your wellies don't fit." And I'm like, ah. So I've got such an audience, and then I've got to now run across and around the lake, and it's middle of winter, so it's boggy as anything. So I'm slipping and sliding around this lake with this audience to then go and wake someone up who we know, being like, "I'm really sorry, but can I borrow your sling?" And he's like, "Yeah, go on, here's the sling and here's some scales as well, just take it all as one." Then I've got to slip and slide back round, get the fish, weigh the fish, but as I'm trying to do this, I'm being watched, and it's like, and then photos as well, but it's also by the full crowd of people. But it's probably the second time I've caught, like, it was a good 20 pound something plus fish, mid-20s. Yeah. And when you've not held a 20, I'd only held a big fish a couple of times up until that point. And like managed one and cared for one. Now it's second nature. But back then, I'm thinking about it, doing everything I need to do properly. I'm being watched by the bailiff and 7 other people. I'm getting comments left, right, and centre, trying to get it right. And I get it back, and I sit down. I'm like, I do not want to catch another fish again for a while. It was just one of those things where just thing after thing, and I just didn't enjoy it. However, what that did for me is we went straight to the shop, bought slings straight away, and from that point onwards, I learned a lot about just, I had proper, scales and weigh bars and slings and proper care and things like that. So I learned a lot, but it was not fun.
That was horrific.
That was one experience that stuck with me.
The only bit I remember about that
was the end bit when you eventually got up.
I was asleep for the most part, was literally the photos at the end. Yeah. And that was it. I don't remember any of the comments. I don't remember any of the carnage.
It was just one of those things where, especially when you're new at a lake and you're really trying to make a good impression, I think that's the main thing, because you could not care about it. But we were trying to make a good impression. It was a lot of regulars, members, and you just sort of think...
No, well, they clearly like take it seriously there.
Yeah.
Like, and it was kind of one of those things that, like, well, when you first turn up and you're immediately quizzed on everything, on what you've got and like what gear you're bringing in and all of that kind of stuff. Plus, then when you walk past the lake, there's a massive sign with all the rules. It's like pretty intimidating. Like, you need to know what all of it means. If it says no leaders, you need to know what a leader is. And you know, if you're early on in fishing and you haven't even explored what leaders are, well, that could be pretty daunting for you.
Also, the reality of getting kicked off a lake is a possibility. And if you're seen and watched and they're all of a sudden like, you don't know what you're doing, that could be the last time you fish there.
Yeah, you know, I think that's one of the biggest things, really, and credit to Andy and Ben, because between those two, like when we first started there, we were established in fishing, but we still had a lot to learn along the way. Of course, like every tiny little like nugget of information that they would just throw at us along the way like helped. So,
yeah, massively. And we're very different from when we were started now to
massively,
now. So
massively.
But yeah, so that's my one, number 2.
Jeez. So this one has actually stemmed from your family.
Oh.
Specifically, the professional that is Grandad.
Yep. The boy.
Yeah. What do we call him?
G-Rand.
OG. G-Rand, Grandpa Boychuk.
Well remembered.
So this was, I think it was during the Lakeview fishery days. May have been a bit after that, but ultimately we have discussed this particular element like a few times throughout fishing. That there was... Okay, so I'll double barrel this story a little bit. We went to Thorpe Lee. Mm-hmm. And Thorpe Lee, for those who don't know, is a massive like 13-acre lake 18-acre lake in Thorpe. And we fished there for the first time. And it was the first time we had to really dig our heels into long distance fishing.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter how much we tried to get distance, we for some reason just couldn't break the 60-70 yard mark.
We thought there was something wrong with us.
Every cast that we were doing, we were whipping it to the extent where something was going to break. Like we were really going for it. And the reason why we were going long distance and we weren't just sticking to margins is because everyone was just catching from that main kind of gravel bar shelf.
The gravel bar, which is, it's probably about 20 odd wraps up, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, it's a long old way. And everyone was catching from there. No one was catching from the margins. And even when we first turned up, the first thing they said was that gravel bar is where everyone catches. And it's a weedy lake as well. So we were like, if you come in any further than that 18 to 20 wraps, well, you're just sitting in weed. And we hadn't really kind of tackled weed at the time. It was a challenge all around. But I just remember throughout that trip, we were casting with serious line. And now only later do I realise what was not letting us cast that distance was because at the time we had 25-pound line on.
Yeah, massive.
And it's just so unnecessary. Like, you just don't need it at all. And then equally as well, like we were fishing with shorter rods. You had 10 foots and I had 9 foots at the time. And we were expecting to try and hit 20 wraps with those. It was never going to happen. But anyway, to kind of like wrap this up as we move through the story, what that experience linking in with what Grandpa Boychuk had told you and you subsequently passed on to me was you can catch a fish on any pound line.
Yeah, you can. Literally,
if you had 5-pound line, 10-pound line, 2-pound line, if you play it right, you can catch it. And this is one thing, not that we recommend ever using 2-pound line for a 30-pound carp, because obviously not right. Stick to all fishery rules that they tell you to, whatever they say the poundage should be, then do it. But yeah, it was kind of one of those things that at that point we were then like, we can probably drop it from 25 pounds and maybe come down to 15. Yeah. I think for the most part now we use 15-pound line. Yeah,
we use 10 or 15. I can't remember if we use 10 or 15 now, but yeah, we...
15, well, I think it's 15 for the most part. It's the, what's it called?
Touchdown or
touchdown.
Like that.
Yeah, I use fluorocarbon. I think you're still on the mono.
I'm on mono, yeah.
Yeah. So no, like that piece of advice from Grandpa Boychuk.
Yep.
And then the real life experience of Thorpe Lee
Yeah.
clearly means you can catch a fish on any pound line.
Yeah, it's true. And that was the one thing. We started off just thinking, let's belt and braces it. In fact, no, I tell you what, that's not why we started fishing with 25-pound line. We went to a commercial fishery which required a minimum of 25-pound line. They had big cats in it. So they required, it was one of those things where you could, in theory, be fishing for a 20-pound carp, and next thing you know, you've got a 70-pound cat on your hook. Yeah. So they required a 25-pound minimum braid. So we, lines or braid. So we uprated our line to that, and then just took it everywhere we went. And we just thought, oh, well, it's probably best.
It'll be fine for everything.
It'll be fine for everything. And it did teach us bad fishing habits, I think, because you don't learn to play the fish as much because you can bully things a bit more. Yeah, you bully it in, and that's not good. Which is not ideal. But I mean, this is going back a long, long while ago now. But no, good one. I like that.
Yeah, solid. I think it's it's one of those things that the natural thing for anyone getting into fishing is I just need strong line. And actually,
well, you also think as well, line. The poundage of the line, and this is something that is really important to know, the poundage of the line does not directly equate to the pound of fish that you can catch with it. And I think that's a common misconception that people, it's because they use pound as like a measurement of, the tensile strength of it, the breaking strength. But I used to think, especially when I first started fishing, that, if I want to catch a 25-pound carp, I need 25-pound line.
Yeah.
And I think that's just something
that's not. Yeah, that's not true at all. No, because actually your rod does the majority of the work.
Yeah, so you can catch a 50-pound fish on 10-pound line. Yeah, it's all to do with the type of lake you're in. If it's snaggy, if it's weedy, So, but I like it. Good one. Right, number 3 for me is going to be another. It's not. Yeah, it's bad. I'm not going to say bad, but I think bad is funner to listen. I've got loads of lovely.
Bad equals learning.
Yeah, bad equals right. Matt Jones in edits. Bad equals learning. I'm not as skilled. You'll have to do this
one. For those that are listening, you won't see that, so you'll just have to...
Oh, yeah, that's a good point, actually. For those who are listening, I pointed at 3 different places in the lens and said, bad equals learning.
Bad equals learning.
And if you do want to listen, YouTube, the fishing channel.
Yeah.
So for me, when we first started going to like more commercial or bigger lakes, at least anyway, we didn't have very much stuff. And I remember us thinking, I distinctively remember saying, I love fishing because it's one of those hobbies where you just don't have to spend much money. It's amazing. You just turn up, all you need is some bait. It's really easy. Fast forward however many tens of thousands of pounds later. But I remember it was a lake where they would drive you to your swim with like a big sort of open trailer on the back. And I remember us seeing like 2 guys sat in a like the car with a trailer full of stuff. And I remember thinking, like, what earth have they got? All that stuff.
Yeah, why do they need that much stuff?
Why do they need that much stuff? Fast forward to us probably having more. But it was that night where it was like a mid-20s summer day. And I didn't have a bivvy. And I was planning to just sleep on a chair under... It was like a little... Like a shelter... Not a shelter. It was basically something I got from Decathlon, which was like a pop-up beach tent in camo, basically. And I decided to put...
This was brilliant.
To put a chair...
Looking back at this now, we were so stupid.
Why would you do this? Decided to put a chair in the pop-up beach tent, which was... It was a fishing style one, but it was cheap. So I thought it would be a smart idea to just put a camping chair in the beach tent and just sleep there. To do a night, basically. And it was peak of the summer, which means peak of the mosquitoes and flies and bugs. And every 3 seconds, I just had that noise where no one's gone into your ear canal, and it's the high pitch in your ear, and it was just relentless. For whatever reason, it was bad there as well. Yeah. It was clouds of them, and I'd ended up trying to put an umbrella over the front of my beach tent to try and close the front of it off. Yeah. And I was sat there and I couldn't sleep, and it was one of the most uncomfortable nights I've ever spent outside, because especially when it was like, we settled down at like 10:30, then you've realistically got to be sat there for another 8 hours, just sat there with things flying into your ears, because I didn't have a sleeping bag, nothing. I just thought I'd just try and sleep upright. And then
you were more vertical than horizontal.
Yeah, I was literally just sat upright. And it wasn't even like a chair like I've got, that you can lean back. It was just an upright camping chair. And then I think only a couple of weeks later, we went to another lake, and I tried the same thing, but thought it would be, I thought I'd be smart, and I took like an umbrella and a bed this time. And then I was literally woken up in the middle of the night to, and I mean it when I say nearly thousands of earwigs everywhere. And I mean in the bed, in my tackle box, on my bags, just on the outside of the bivvy. I've never seen so many earwigs in my life.
Yeah. What was I sleeping in that night? Because
you had your Fox 60 brolly.
Did I?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
No.
You'd only just got it, because you literally got it the session we went to Furness. And it was like literally the week later we went. And I was getting a bivvy, but it was just like the week. I was like looking for one, and I hadn't decided which one I wanted to get yet. So...
Oh, I can't believe that.
Yeah. And it was just...
We should have both just camped in my...
It was one of those things where...
Why did we do that?
I had no idea. But there wasn't enough room, realistically. But
it
both of those...
far better than you sleeping with the earwigs.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah. But by that point, I just stayed up. I stayed up all night, and I just thought, there's just no way I'm going to even... I hate earwigs. I don't mind any other bug. Yeah, for some reason, hate earwigs. But yeah, the reality is, from those two experiences, pretty much back to back, I went away literally that next day, I think, and I bought a bivvy. I bought everything else that I would need for sleeping, and now, we have. And that's probably why I now am so akin to having an inner dome, bivvy, and everything like that.
It's those early lessons that now you're scarred for life because of the thousands of earwigs that came after you that one time. You had an army of earwigs.
Earwigs, mosquitoes. And I don't mind bugs. I think you have to be okay with pretty much all wildlife and bugs to be a fisherman for the most part. It's just a case of if I'm sleeping, when they're going in your ears and you're everywhere else, that's when it's just a bit...
It's too much. It's too much.
So yeah.
No, okay, that's a very good lesson that we learned the hard way on.
I did, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think my third one kind of stems... Because it's kind of related. It was at the same place and on the same lake as one of these stories, because I think you had two bad camping experiences.
Well, probably more, but that was it.
Those were the two memorable ones. The scarring ones.
Well, there was another one where I did a 2-man tent, and my rod went, and it was like a tunnel tent, and having to get out of a tunnel tent, that's like those little really low to the ground ones. So like you can't sit up because it's too low, so you have to I had to go around the side and throw myself up the front, and then anyway.
Yeah, that's
bivvies are there for a reason.
They are built, for fishermen. So just buy a bivvy. So again, it's another bad experience, but it was kind of the first time that I think we'd realised what makes a good lake to fish and a bad lake to fish, and who takes it seriously versus doesn't, and where you get this, I guess, this kind of phrase of those people that are noddies. So we went to this lake that online it looked quite nice.
Yeah, classic. I was massive fishing here. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it looked good. But when we signed up, when we got there, we were like, okay, it's quite busy, and we literally walked onto the lake. And I don't think I've ever seen so many lines going through the water at one lake. It was literally like looking at the front of a guitar. It was just nothing but sheer lines going through the water all the way around the donut. Every fisherman, there was a fisherman in every single swim. And then in the gaps between those swims, there was more fishermen. Yeah. And each of them were also fishing 3 rods.
It was... almost funny to look at along the side.
It was, and I guess the biggest thing was the fishing. They weren't massive, were they? They were only I think 5 to 10 pounds, really.
No, I think up to 22. There was 1 or 2 that were
slightly bigger. But yeah, the most common fish coming out was on the smaller side. But the issue that they had is no one on the lake knew how to catch a fish at all, and because everyone was fishing so close together. Soon as they caught one, it then wiped out 6 rods to the right and 6 rods to the left.
And it was literally as many as 6 rods either way. I remember just alarms going off left, right, and centre. It was chaos.
Yeah, it was just absolute carnage. And I just remember us fishing for a little bit and then zacking it in and being like, this is just too much. We literally can't. Someone's just going to take us out, and it's just Well,
we were quite lucky because we were in a corner. I remember that really well, and we were on the corner. And there was a forced break between us and like the next person, because there was like a
Well, there was a huge row of hedges.
Yeah,
that were literally
hedges?
like on the edge of the bank. So, like when fishermen were going in between the other swims, you physically couldn't do it here because there's a massive bush.
Yeah,
in the way.
but literally alongside, I remember there was just one guy who, and it was a situation where it was a guy who was obviously with his friend as well, so he probably hadn't caught a fish before, and he literally just held it there, and it just went like all the way as far as it could one way, and it just took out so many lines. Yeah, it's a really good. I completely forgot about that.
But that made me have a real, I guess, sense of grounding now for how fisheries operate and what is the done thing to do. And it's like, you compare places like that to where we are now, it's night and day. Like, you know, where we are now, it's the most professional place that you'd ever come across. It's just, you know, they do everything by the book, everything the way it should be done. Then you get places like that are just like carnage.
Yeah, well, the reality is, like a lot of fisheries, it's just a case of, right, well, let's put more swims in it because we can charge more money per day, really. And that's why. And it doesn't create a nice, long-lasting experience. So.
Not at all. So yeah, that's my third one. So I think clearly throughout all of this, we've had some
goods and bads. I think we started with a nice little wholesome one. Yeah. And then it was just like, this has happened. This was terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've definitely got, I mean, there's so many. As I was sort of thinking about like some good ones and top three and so, there's probably worse, there's probably better. But yeah, I think that's what makes it fun though.
I got one little one to wrap up on.
Oh, a little honourable mention.
Yeah, which is more how we met.
Ooh.
And I ended up ditching what was a friend of mine at the time and came over to this group.
Yeah, well, I came over to you, didn't I? Because I saw the friend you were with, who I knew. He was a mutual friend. And I came over and then he was like, oh yeah, all right, how's it going? This is my friend Matt. And then we were like, oh, how's it going? And we got chatting, I think, didn't we?
Well, we were at different schools at the time, weren't we?
Yeah.
Because I was at a school called Hazelwick and you were at Maidenbower at the time.
I was at Oriel at the time.
Oriel. And then, yeah, so we kind of, I guess, from that point then knew of each other, but we didn't see each other every day because we were at the same schools.
And then you joined the school and I was like, right, I know him. We're having him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I was literally roped into that friendship group and
here we are now.
What we
doing this?
15 years later?
About that, yeah, I think so. Yeah, give or take. Lovely little wholesome ending bit there.
Yeah.
Nice little sandwich. Wholesome sandwich.
Is it a wholesome sandwich?
Okay, cool, nice. Right, well, so we normally do now, this is going to be a little section, we'll do questions from you or something else, or reviews, news, just anything. A nice little tail end segment.
Yep.
And Matt's going to lead us in with something. I have no idea what it is.
So yeah, I've got something for you. It's kind of a two-parter. To tell you something and to ask you something.
Ooh, okay.
So what I'm going to tell you first is I've brought some new gear.
Ooh.
I've swapped out my pod. I've actually dug out some of my old... Do you remember the Fox Black Label bank sticks that I had?
Yes.
I had the bars already. So I brought some new stakes for the ground, and I'm now going to go back to using them. So I've brought some new stuff, mainly in the big heavy duty ground sticks to go into the ground, but I'm reusing gear I already had.
So I feel a bit betrayed, mainly because the last thing I said to you when we were fishing last is I'm going to buy some new bank sticks, and you've just gone away and done it without consulting me.
Consider it as a bit of credit that I'm giving you because you planted the seed and now I'm here. Yeah,
okay.
But to be fair, I have the same problem as you do.
Yeah.
When I went fishing the other day, like the back ends of the pod now just do this.
Yeah.
They don't actually stick in the ground anymore because all of the threads are loose and it doesn't matter how much you tighten them up, they're not tightening. Mm-hmm. So I needed something new. So I did that. So basically I've brought 2 screw-in bank sticks into the ground, and I've also gone a bit rogue.
Oh, don't like this.
I've brought a stage stand.
Oh, complete with drill. Well,
complete with drill.
I'm going to turn up and just hear from the other side of the bivvy like.
No. So actually, you don't need a drill.
No,
you just screw in by hand.
You've got screws. Okay. Yeah.
So that's my That's what I was going to tell you.
Okay.
And my question is, you've not done it yet.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking?
So firstly, I'm on the spot here. But I think the reality is, it's just trying to find... The thing is, I love the aesthetic of like the singles, the quarter singles. I love the aesthetic of them. But the reality is, I don't have an aversion to spending money on anything in carp fishing, because the reality is, I mean, I'm too far committed to not.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's like £200-300
when you total it up bit by bit. It's about 250-300 quid.
I just can't justify that. I don't think yet, at least anyway. Maybe I'll have to relook at it, but it just feels like a lot. And I know there's been a lot of brands coming out recently with some really similar things for probably half that, which I think I can probably justify. And that's what I'm going to look into.
Nice.
But for me, it's use case, it's usability. I have a real thing for like everything looking relatively neat. Like I don't want one, bite alarm 3 inches higher than the other. I like it all to look quite nice. But I also want to be able to get it into the ground and actually work, right? And that's where the stands come into play really well, because you literally just open it, put it together, drop it on the ground, and then it's probably going to be good to go. But I don't love how they look. Yeah. It's sort of like these big cannons sometimes that don't sort of hold your rods. So I'm going to watch this space. Next episode, we'll find out. So thank you very much for listening or watching, however you get your podcasts, and thank you for liking, subscribing, following, all that good stuff. If you do that,
welcomed.
If you do that, we can make sure that you stay updated. It also shows us that people are listening, and we'll do another one. But for now, we'll catch you later.
Catch you later.